Alright, let's go over the parts of the kidney and let's go over some parts of the urinary system before we get into the nitty-gritty and the star of the kidney. So before we get there, afferent is just the organization of the kidney, and micture means urinate, so micturate is actually the proper term for urinating. Glome is part of the kidney. It's going to be called the glomerulus. That's going to be the heart of what the kidney does. Distal is just point of attachment. Nephr is also part of the kidney, as well as rene. Renal also refers to the kidney, and we'll talk about what those parts mean. And then proximal is nearest to the point of reference. So proximal and distal. A quick overview of the kidney is going to be that we have two kidneys, hopefully. You will have an adrenal gland that sits on the top, which we'll talk about soon. But the functional units of the kidney will be the ureter, and then we'll have the bladder, and we'll have some sphincter that will go ahead and open up and allow urine stream to leave. So we have our kidneys, our ureters, the bladder, the sphincter, and the urethra is where urine comes out of. The functions of the kidney probably make sense. They're part of our excretory system. They filter blood plasma. Just remember that what we're doing with the kidney is not just making urine. We're actually taking blood, taking out just the waste components that all the cells have made, and we're collecting them, and eventually, if we can't recycle any of that material, that becomes urine. Also, if you drink too much water, which is kind of hard in the summer, it's going to turn that excess water into urine. If you're producing too little urine, it's because you're trying to produce a little bit of water that's going to push out the waste from your body. So the perfect urine, I guess, would be not too yellow, wouldn't smell terrible, but if your urine smells terrible and it's very yellow, and that's going to be a major problem. It's usually because you're low in water. In the summer, you could be drinking like 14 cups of water a day and still have that kind of urine, and it's just because you might be excreting a lot of that water out as sweat. So the other things that the function of the kidney does is regulate blood volume, which makes sense. If your blood is too viscous, it's going to push that water out as urine. If your blood is too thin, it's definitely going to make you not urinate. It secretes hormones, and we'll talk about EPO. That's something that helps regulate red blood cells and renin. It regulates the acid and base balance of the blood. We want to keep sure that blood is closest to 7 as possible, because there's going to be enzymes and hormones that are in there, and if the pH gets a little too wild, they just won't work efficiently or work at all. Wastes that are filtered in the kidneys, the things that we're going to be filtering out is any excess minerals such as sodium, chloride, potassium, nitrogen wastes were also going to be destroyed. Urea is usually from protein metabolism. It sort of breaks down. Uric acid is from nucleotides that are broken down. That's the thing that smells, uric acid. And that's from uracil. If you remember DNA and RNA, there's a U, and the uric acids comes from uracil, and that's what the smell comes from. And creatine, that's going to be a thing that helps us do energy in our muscles. If we look at the volume of urine itself, you'll see that the majority of the volume of urine is mostly water, but if we were to break down the solutes that are in there, you'll see that the majority of the solutes is urea. There's a little bit of chloride ions, sodium, potassium. Creatine is a little bit. Bicarbonates, that's to help the pH balances. Uric acid, those are the typical things that we'll find in urine. But the things that we'll also find in urine are going to be hormone levels. We'll be able to see what's going on there. We'll be able to see if you are producing too much of a hormone or something like that. Antibodies that your body's producing, we can also capture those from urine. and then before I run off, the other functions that we see with urine is that there's going to be, they maintain normal electrolytes. So for instance, if you drink a whole bunch of Gatorade but do nothing, you're going to pee out a lot of those electrolytes that are in the Gatorade. But if you're the kind of person that does athletic things, you're going to use those electrolytes to help you do what you need to do. It's also going to be helpful to maintain pH. That's where that bicarbonates come in. And that'll help with blood pressure too. Keep in mind your blood is mostly water. If there's too much water in your blood, you're going to have higher blood pressure, so we're going to pee that water out. And if your blood pressure is too low, it's because maybe you need water, so you'll add that water to your blood. So your kidneys are going to help with that process too. Well, let's look at the anatomy of the kidney. You'll find out that there's the renal cortex, and if we kind of look at the ureter itself, so this would be, let's kind of all start again. So of each heartbeat, 25% of that blood is going to go into the kidneys. And that's going to be from the renal arteries. And of the blood that gets filtered, that will get pumped out through the renal veins. If we look at the anatomy of the kidney itself, we'll see that we'll have these renal papillae, and that's where we're going to have a lot of these things called nephrons, and they're going to help filter our urine, which you'll see them soon. The renal medulla, that's going to be this whole structure itself. The papillae is where they kind of come in, and they come in off of the ureter, so you can see that what's happening is they'll filter, and then of course they're going to dump that waste into the ureter and push it out. The renal capsule is the outside component of the kidney itself, and remember it's going to be covered with a fat layer to protect it. There's the minor calyx and the major calyx. These are just breaking off points for how that urine is going to come out and eventually go into the ureter. Renal column, that's going to be this area right over here, and then the renal pyramids, they kind of look like pyramids, so that's where they get their names. The renal cortex, which is the outer layer, that's going to be at 1 centimeter of tissue, and the renal medulla, that's going to be including the pyramids and the columns, and that is going to be the functional unit of the kidney. But if we were to go ahead and look at one of those renal cortexes and the renal medulla, you'll actually go ahead and see that that's where our action of the kidney takes place. What we're going to be looking for are these things called nephrons. And granted, here we're only seeing 4. Every kidney has millions, or 3, I guess. But every kidney has millions, and some of them are going to be longer than others. And we'll talk about the 2 different types of nephrons and what they do soon. But really what's happening here is blood is going to come in, and we're going to filter out the solid parts of blood and keep it going, and it'll go out to the veins. And the liquidy part, the plasma, is going to go ahead and get filtered out here, and any waste product will continue down to the ureter eventually, and anything that can be used or recycled will just get dumped right back into the body. Here's the flow of blood into the kidney. We're going to have blood come in through the renal artery from the abdominal aorta. We're going to have the segmental arteries sort of branch off from there. And then we'll have our interlobal arteries. They're going to keep going and starting to differentiate. We're going to go ahead and keep differentiating in those pyramids, and that's going to be the articulated arteries to the interlobal arteries. Eventually, we're going to get to the afferent arterioles. They're going to be very important soon because they feed the nephron, and they'll sort of control speed of blood into the nephron. And really, the heart of the nephron, or the starting off point, is going to be the glomerulus. And you have the link to this later. You can go ahead and check that out. But if we were to go ahead and look at the kidney, this is all the parts that you're going to need to know. But really the star of the show of the kidney is going to be the nephrons. And keep in mind, the nephrons are all in these areas right up here, and the rest is either designed to get stuff that we filtered out back into the body through the renal vein, or to go ahead and get waste out through the ureter.